Now, last fall, I told you about the first run on the bank in years. It was lines of people that were forming outside branches of England's Northern Rock Bank. My point at the time on this program was this is likely only the beginning because loaning banks taxpayer dollars with a hope of, them covering up their underlying problems it's not going to last. So now we see what happens today when that well runs dry. Despite receiving $49 billion in emergency loans from the British government, Northern Rock Bank now has been nationalized, which is a fancy way of saying that the government has taken over and stuck the people with the bill. That's all just to prevent the bank from collapsing. That means the British government is now responsible for running a bank with $222 billion in assets and 6,500 employees. The real story is, we, America, following right in their footsteps. Over a matter of just a few months, the British government went from lending Northern Rock money and then to guaranteeing their risky loans to now completely owning them. Now think about what our own government has done just recently. They've already massively increased loans to the banks. They're now moving right out of stage 2, guaranteeing or outright buying their riskiest loans. One of these plans, which, not surprisingly, is being pitched by a bank, would allow delinquent borrowers to refinance into loans that would be guaranteed by the government. Guess who's on the hook if those delinquent borrowers stop paying? You. Senator Chris Dodd has even proposed something similar. He actually wants to resurrect a federal agency from the 1930s to buy up all of the bad loans and make taxpayers take on the risk. Just what we need. Bigger government, more spending, and more bad debt. Yes, now it's fixed. A few months ago, anyone proposing plans like this would have been laughed right out of the Capitol, but now they're actually having hearings on these things. Senator Chuck Schumer even called the bank's proposal, quote, an interesting idea that we're looking at seriously. Chuck, come on, man, go back to grandstanding in front of a gas station and leave our banks alone, will you? This proves just how much letting politics trump economic common sense is trouble. But it also proves something worse. We are following right in England's footsteps to a place where no one is ever allowed to fail, where the government stifles all competition, and it's a place we used to call a socialist state. Congressman Scott Garrett is a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, come on. Please help me out on this. How does anybody that you work with think that taking over a bad bank will actually help or save the economy?
It is amazing to think that that's where we're getting to. But, this is not the first sign of this. For the 5 years that I've been in Congress now, I've been waving the flag about another institution in this country, and that is the GSEs, the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Yeah.
They're basically connected to the federal government, and the taxpayers on the hook, upwards now to almost $7 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars in debt that they have collectively. And with what's going on now, the House, just as you didn't add, this is a new factoid you can add to your list there. The House and the Senate passed legislation just a week ago that raised their limits as well as far as what loans that they can get into, so they can get into the jumbo loans. So they're going to be over 75% of the market. So what's going on?
And you know what? Nobody learns their lesson this way. Do you know today that at Northern Rock Bank, you can still get 125% loan for a house? You can still, and their slogan, I love this, their slogan is business as usual.
Yeah. Well, Alexander Hamilton had the idea of having a national bank in this country, and we saw what happened with that. The governments should not be in the business of running banks. And the problem is that some financial institutions have just gotten so large that they realize they're so big that governments can't allow them to fail. And that's what happened in this situation. That's going to happen over here in the United States with some of our larger financial institutions. And there will be congresspeople and senators who will placate to it and say, sure, we'll bail them out.
So then what happens? We can't take on all of this debt. What happened? We just print more money and...
Well, thank you. That's what happened right now with our own government, as far as we're just spending too much money. And what's the best solution for any government, of course, is if they're not taking enough revenue right now, print more money, you create inflation, which is bad for the poor person, but great for the government at the end of the day, because more money comes in. So we have to look to another alternative than what's been done in the past.
Congressman, are you frightened at all?
I'm very frightened.
I see our country. I see people, my listeners, my viewers, they make fun of me. They're like, oh, Glenn, you're so paranoid. Oh, my father said to me about a year ago, he said, Glenn, the United States of America, it will never fail. It will never be into this trouble. We'll never repeat the Depression. I said, Dad, We're making the same mistakes over and over again. We can't just print money and then just have all of these candidates that are running for president say, oh, and we're going to have health care, and we're also going to have a new Green Corps, and we're going to have all of these programs. When does it end?
Hopefully it ends with this next presidential election, and the people will be alert to these issues and vote the right way. But we also said for centuries there will always be in England, there will always be a Bank of England. But what happened over there, of course, is what you normally see in third world countries, a nationalization of a financial institutions. You don't see that in first world countries. And this is the first time. You talked about your report a year ago. That was the first time since around 1860 or 1866 that you had a run on the bank. That can happen here, too, if we take actions like Schumer and other people are talking about.
Congressman, we'll be watching closely. Thank you very much. You let us know how we can help. Now,
new
reports out today that say U.S. banks, which have already written off over $120 billion, and remember, oh no, that's all that, we're fine after that. They're now preparing to write off upwards of another $203 billion. Now, I don't know about you, but these numbers are so big, so enormous, they don't even mean anything anymore, you know? But the real story is they are going to mean something to you pretty soon, especially if you have a kid that goes to college. You probably have never heard of something called auction rate securities. I honestly hadn't until over the weekend when I started doing some homework on them. That this is a little corner of the credit market that just might prevent your child from getting the student loan that they need. In the last few weeks, these auctions, which help large borrowers like towns and municipalities and financial aid companies raise money, they've had almost no demand, no buyers. Now, those who were lucky enough to raise any capital at all have been forced to pay sky-high interest rates, some places up to 25%. Everybody else, like student loan providers, just shut out. So what does that mean for families who are depending on that money for college? What about the other areas of credit that most of us just take for granted, like going out and getting a car loan or credit cards? Are those also at risk of drying up? Jane Kim is a personal finance reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Jane, thanks for being on the program. First of all, let me start with this Michigan student loan. It has been suspended. That's never happened before, if I'm not mistaken. This is a big, big deal, right?
Right, it is a big deal. I mean, it's unprecedented in some ways. You're seeing a lot of lenders having trouble raising money for student loans, and that's having a big impact for families because as these lenders have trouble getting a demand for loans or funding for the loans, they aren't able to make these loans to families and students, and the loans that they are able to make are much more expensive than they used to be just a year ago.
Jane, will you help me figure something out? Because you would know the answer to this, and honestly, I'm a dummy when it comes to this stuff. The Fed keeps cutting rates, which means money's getting cheaper. There's more. They keep dumping more money. They keep printing more money, making it available. The banks then take that money. But then there's no liquidity. There's no money to actually loan to people. Even if you have good credit right now, nobody can get a good loan. It's only getting worse. What are they doing with the money? Are they just covering the bad assets? Are they holding on to it because they're afraid of the bad loans that they do have?
Well, that's a big part of it. I mean, that's what's so ironic about the situation. Their cost of funding is getting cheaper, but at the same time, they're seeing higher delinquencies. They're seeing a lot of their loans go bad, so they're keeping more of those cost savings in their back pocket as reserves. So even though rates are rates are falling, and it should be getting cheaper for a lot of borrowers out there, for a lot of the new loans have much higher interest rates than they used to before.
When does this affect me going out and buying a new car and getting a car loan? When does this affect my credit card?
It's already starting to happen. If you're in the market for, say, a new car loan, if you've got stellar credit, there's actually some good news here. You can find better deals than you have been able to in the past. But any minor blemish, or if you've got scuff credit, you're going to likely have to put down a bigger down payment. You'll need a higher credit score in order to qualify for the same loan. The same thing goes with credit cards. Lenders are tightening up their credit standards. They're seeing higher delinquencies. They're charging more fees, hiking up interest rates, and they're being a lot less generous with the credit lines that they used to be.
And they are still making tons of money. Jane, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.